Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Sae-san Studio. My name is Sae, and today we're going to be looking at my midsummer garden. Thank you for joining me for this third segment in this series that looks at my garden over the course of a whole year. Part 1 covered the evolution of my gardening philosophy, and so my garden, which was almost entirely lawn to start off with, turned into a haven for native and naturalized plants that hosted diverse wildlife. Part 2 looked at my early summer garden and some of the amazing creatures that I found in it. If you haven't already watched those two, I strongly suggest that you do, since it will help everything I say in this episode make sense. This part, I will look at mid-July to mid-August, and even take a look at how I handle pests. By now, I guess it's pretty evident that this is going to be more than just a 4-part series, but I'm okay to keep filming to see how many we end up with. So let's forge ahead. To me, summer would not be complete without the radiant smile of Tickseed. This elegant native plant starts blooming in June, and as long as you deadhead it, it will just keep blooming until frost. I like to pair it with blanket flower, a plant that is native to central and southern US states, but has made itself quite at home all the way up to northern Ontario. While Tickseed's yellow blooms sway on those long, elegant flower stems, blanket flower is a low-growing plant that adds color at the bottom. It has 4 stages in its blooms, and as they kind of mature, you can see it's beautiful in all stages, right until the bright colored pom-pom of the seed pod. Now, one way that I can ensure these plants keep blooming for a long time is called deadheading. That means removing seed pods. I spoke about it in the last episode, but both Tickseed and blanket flower really need to be deadheaded. Also, something like my Asiatic lily, I will take those seed pods off because it needs to focus on nourishing the bulb. And of course, this wouldn't be complete without a look at some of the beautiful pollinators that like to visit both Tickseed and blanket flower. And of course, one of my favorite pictures is this one with the 2 bees using the Tickseed as a bunk bed right before nightfall. Another plant that benefits greatly from deadheading is balloon flower, and in case you wondered why it's called balloon flower, well, take a look at those blooms. They look like beautiful balloons before they open into this stunning star shape. I have this beautiful tall one that grows to about 1 meter high, and also this tiny one that grows only about 25 centimeters. But gardening is not just about growing plants, but also about keeping watch for trouble. And one sign of trouble I don't want to see is squirrels digging up my tulips. Now, my entire family loves all wildlife, including squirrels, and we've invested quite a bit of time creating the squirrel dining etiquette program with many successful graduates. However, even though we provide seeding and gourmet food for our squirrels, even the most successful graduates like Juliet here can succumb to the temptation of hitting the bird feeder or digging up tulips. So I sprinkle the tulip beds with a layer of crushed eggshells that deter squirrels and even snails. You'll never throw out another eggshell when you see how well it works. I guess this is a good time for me to tell you about my combat gear for pests. Eggshells, of course. Extra long pair of tweezers, sharp pruners, gardening gloves, a container to put the pests. If they're suitable, I feed them to our fish. If not, I make a mixture of alcohol or water and soap to drown them. Let me give you some examples of pest attacks that I've dealt with. In early July, my magenta Beebalm was stunning. Within a matter of 2 days, all the blooms had been eaten up, and I noticed some droppings on one bloom. So I used my tweezer and found the culprit, Horsemint caterpillar. and I found it in other blooms. So I disbudded all the affected blooms that I could find and removed the caterpillars with tweezers, fed them to our sparrows and fish, and within a matter of 3 weeks my bee balm had bounced back. No chemicals, just some elbow grease. Another pest I've seen is the red milkweed beetle that eats milkweed leaves, so there's nothing left for monarch caterpillars. Tweezers it is. And then I love my lilies. But I know in a matter of a day, the lily leaf beetle will chew everything up and turn it to mush. So what do I reach for? Tweezers. And then this year I saw a huge outpouring of Japanese beetles attacking my Rose of Sharon blooms. Oh, this is 2 of them snuggling up as they make devious plans to eat this bloom. Guess what I got? Tweezers. But probably the hardest battle that I have each year is with the dreaded iris borer. I absolutely love bearded irises, and I'm constantly fighting to protect them. And when I see damaged leaves, I dig up the rhizome to see if it's something that I can salvage. But let me show you what the borer looks like. It's actually the larva of a moth that works its way down through the leaf and eats right through the rhizome. And then it goes and pupates in the soil and turns into a moth, comes out, and in September lays eggs on other irises. Let me show you. This is probably one of the largest ones that I've seen. Horrible. So I capture these, but more important than this part is the prevention that I have to do every year. You see, as the moth flies around to lay eggs, it could be coming from other houses as well, and it needs debris where the eggs it lays can overwinter to emerge in the spring. So I have to not only cut back all of the leaves of my irises, but also remove any debris, any place that can give shelter. And instead of putting these leaves in my own compost, I put them in a yard waste bag that is collected on garbage days. And this is one time where prevention will really help my irises. So as I continue to look around my garden, what do I see except my beautiful hardy yucca? Now this is a pretty amazing plant because it looks so tropical, but it's hardy all the way from Mexico right to the Arctic Circle. And it's got beautiful tropical white blooms, and it stays evergreen. So absolutely one of my favorites. And of course, no garden is complete without bee balm. I have a native one, and I have the magenta one I just spoke about. Native one's my favorite. Bee balm has medicinal values, and the leaves are actually used to flavor Earl Grey tea. And everybody comes for a party when bee balm's in bloom, including this red Admiral. And bumblebees love it. But it's quite beautiful to see how they collect pollen. And of course, size doesn't matter for the bee balm because everybody's welcome. It is absolutely glorious. So I could have a whole segment talking about bee balm. But the one thing I noticed this year was that because of the drought that we had, my bee balm didn't flower for as long as it usually does. I mean, we're talking about a couple of weeks of scorching heat with no rain. Everything started to wither. Plants where I would expect them to be blooming for longer just started shriveling up. Bee balm was one of them, and I had to do the unthinkable, which was water my garden. I believe in planting with conditions. The only plant that seemed to like it was the lavender, which is extremely drought tolerant. But when it did rain, it was a downpour. And it was a reminder of what happens with climate change. So as we're talking about being in the middle of climate change, it's not about, oh, Canada's going to be warm like California. It's about the weather pattern becoming more intense. When we have warm weather, it's hot and killing everything. When it rains, it's a downpour that causes floods. So hopefully we can take some action and stop this before it's way too late. Speaking of lavender, my lavender is one of those foundational plants for the summer. It starts off as a kind of an unnoticeable little bush, and it just keeps growing. By the end of June, you can see the flower heads, and it starts turning into this glorious, glorious plant that everybody loves. Where the Beebalm leaves off, the lavender takes over as party central. And of course you can see the same gang hanging out over here. Now this whole plant started out from this tiny plug, but this is what happens when you plant something that loves where it is. By the end of July, the blooms start dying down, and it's towards mid-August that it starts going to seed. But it's around the same time that maybe my other favorite plant, globe thistle, starts blooming. Now this is the most beautiful blue you can have in your garden, and it is just mesmerizing. Flashback to early June, it was just a little bush, and you can see the blooms start to form. And what I like, it's got that silvery foliage, and it's almost metallic, and even before the blooms open, the bees flock to it. And when it starts to open, man, do they love it. Just rolling around in there. And I think I must have spent most of my time this past few weeks just filming this. And you can see here's this little bee just taking its time sipping that nectar. And then this is where you ask, is there an occupancy limit on a globe thistle in the middle of this pandemic? 3? Come on. It's just like that the whole summer. So if you want something that makes a statement, globe thistle has to be it. Everybody likes it. It's beautiful. It is native, but it can be a little invasive, so you have to watch out and trim back those seed heads. But this was an interesting video that I got. There's a little spider over there. I don't know if it's trying to eat the bee, because that bee is like way, way, way bigger. But there's also a hoverfly. And in case you wonder why they call them hoverfly, well, look at that. That is an artist right there. And as the seed heads start forming and the blooms mature, I just have to look right next to it to this beauty. Now this is a variegated flat sea holly, and once I start telling you a little bit about the history, you'll see why I love this so much. The leaves are stunning, even before the blooms form. And that variegation is just beautiful. Now this is the 3rd year I have this plant, and it hasn't bloomed before because it takes a long while to settle in. But you can see the more it grows, the more spikes and bloom heads it sends out. And then it turns this beautiful shade of purple. And when it gets all fluffy, the bees flock to it. Absolutely stunning. So I guess this is where I end my tour of my midsummer garden, and I'll have another one about the end of summer. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and please let me know if you have any questions. Now if you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and click that bell button so you see when I have more videos posted. For those who are in Canada, I do have some seeds of some of the plants that you saw for sale on my Etsy shop. So if you have a chance, go check that out. Otherwise, happy gardening, and I'll talk with you in the next segment. Bye now.